in. It's Friday edition Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. I'm Chris Yao. He's Maurice Patton, and it is Friday.
Friday.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because after 2 straight weeks of only doing 3 shows,
we really don't have a whole lot to complain
No,
about.
we've been on the back side of the week for two weeks straight, and now obviously it's easier to do that at that point in time because there's a lot less outside of college bowl games. There's just not as much that's going on. But now that college basketball is ramping up, we're getting into conference play for everybody in the Division I level, men's and women's. We're going to be talking a lot about that today. As a matter of fact, it's getting that time where it feels like, things are ramping up. Even as college football is winding down, there's a lot more basketball teams than there are football teams now.
There are, and they're doubled because there's men's and women's.
That's right. So you got.
In fact, there was some interest in women's results last night that we're going to touch on in the rundown and possibly beyond.
Yeah, no doubt. So it's going to be an exciting show, an exciting rest of the month. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We hope that you will stick around for the remainder of the show because we have for you David UBBEN, who will talk a little bit about Willie Simmons and his apparently now concluded decision to make his way to Duke and become a position coach and leave his head coaching position at Florida A&M, where he just won the Celebration Bowl and the HBCU National Championship. So UBBEN's going to join us with that. We'll probably talk a little bit and touch on the College Football National Championship game that will be taking place on Monday. We'll also talk with Terry McCormick as the Titans prepare for a win-win situation on Sunday. So can't beat that. It's always good when if you lose, you still win. And that is what the Titans situation is.
Although, again, I think you're going to have a tough time. Yeah.
Despite what Mike Vrabel did say to a columnist in this in Middle Tennessee yesterday. So, yeah. Those comments were great. We can't play them on our show, but they were great. We'll also talk.
You play to win the game.
Yeah, he had some more colorful language than that. Oh, man. Blake Lovell's going to join us, talk a little SEC hoops as conference play is going to get started for the men tomorrow. All of that. The NCAA has extended a contract for its championship games to be broadcast on ESPN. There's some interesting scenarios that could take place within that. In addition,
that's not been universally
it's
received.
It's a little controversial. And so, and then another controversial issue regarding money, surprise, surprise, is the college football playoff is considering withholding, I guess, dividends, for lack of a better term, to group of 5 teams who move up to power conferences for a certain period of time.
Ooh.
And so we'll get into that as well. And then we'll look ahead to the weekend. There's a lot going on this weekend, so looking forward to it. Now, before we look ahead, let's look back to yesterday's scores. We'll also get you this weekend's schedule. All of that on the rundown.
This is the Rundown.
The Friday Rundown is brought to you by Chip Walters of Exit Realty, Bob Lamb & Associates. The Blue Raider Voice also wants to be your trusted advisor in real estate. Contact Chip at 615-542-1915 or through his website at choosechip.net. Chip Walters, proud to support youth sports across Middle Tennessee.
Girls basketball last night, Ensworth down Brentwood Academy 56-47. It was Nashville Christian with a 56-35 win over Clarksville Academy. Christ Presbyterian 59, St. Cecilia Academy 36. Eagleville down Mount Pleasant 81-13. Zizo Harding 41-30 winners over Davidson Academy, and Father Ryan with a 43-35 win over Lipscomb Academy. Dawson Christian down Friendship Christian 50-30. Pope Prep a 51-50 winner over Harper Hall. Lawrence County by Rockville 57-44. Spring Hill 64-44 winners over Giles County. Sycamore down Murfreesboro Central in a thrill of 40-39, and Riverside Christian with a 41-34 win over Zion Christian.
In boys basketball, Brentwood Academy defeated Ensworth 52-41 on Thursday night. Also, Clarksville Academy with a 74-29 win over Nashville Christian. Eagleville defeated Mount Pleasant 53-46. Ezel Harding with a 68-45 win over Davidson Academy. Lipscomb Academy 58, Father Ryan 56. Friendship Christian down Donaldson Christian 71-48. It was Lawrence County with a 62-45 win over Rockvale. Pope Prep.
You're welcome.
Yeah. 69, Montgomery Bell Academy 62. Good Pasture with a 55-25 win over Mount Juliet Christian. Giles County got a big night out of KT Turner down Spring Hill 88-33. Murfreesboro Central with a 73-63 win over Sycamore, and Zion Christian 68, Riverside Christian 30.
In men's basketball action at the collegiate level, Austin P gets a win over Bellarmine 84-68. Eastern Kentucky brings Lipscomb down to reality with an 80-72 win over the Bison. Southern Indiana edges Tennessee State 69-67. Big win for Trevecca, 82-71 over Ashland, and Fisk with a 91-82 win down against the Virgin Islands. Women's basketball action, Southern Indiana completed the sweep of the Tigers and Lady Tigers, 78-57 the final on the women's side. Austin P down Bellarmine 65-63. It was Lipscomb 64-59 winners over Eastern Kentucky. Vanderbilt, with a large chunk of the game played without its star player, 71-66 winners over Mississippi State. Belmont downs Illinois State 64-52. Tennessee with a 75-67 win over Auburn. Trevecca falls to Ashland at 72-68, but anybody who knows anything about Ashland knows that that is a respectable score against the, I think, defending national champs. So there you go. Fisk, 86-50 winners over the Virgin Islands, completing that sweep. In NHL play, Calgary doubles up the Predators. UC Soros struggling 6-3 the final in Nashville.
Today's high school basketball schedule, these are all double headers, all 6 o'clock starts. Oakland is at Beach. Cane Ridge hosts Lipscomb. A lot of purple there. East Hickman's at Cheatham County. Springfield goes to Clarksville Northwest. Columbia Central hosting Warren County. Dixon County taking on visiting West Creek. Maplewood goes to East Nashville. Portland is at East Robertson. Laverne travels to FC Boyd Senior Christian. The oldest rivalry in Williamson County. Brentwood goes to Franklin. Zion Christian is at Franklin Christian. Zion Christian and Knowledge Academies are not both at Franklin Christian. Go to Franklin Christian, see who shows up. Columbia Academy is at Franklin Road Academy at 6 o'clock. Also, Station Camp is at Gallatin. Glencliff hosts Antioch. Franklin Classical is at Hampshire. Hickman County travels to Harpeth. Hendersonville faces visiting Stewart's Creek. Centennial is at Independence. Henry County goes to Kenwood. Clarksville is at Kirkwood. Loretto comes to Lawrence County. Green Hill is at Lebanon. Marshall County hosting Lead Academy. Smyrna is at McGavock. Providence Christian goes to Middle Tennessee Christian. Holler Rock Brewston is at Montgomery Central. Eagleville goes to Moore County. Wilson Central is at Mount Juliet, and Page hosts Summit.
Also tonight in Williamson County action, Nolensville's at Ravenwood. Richland is at home against Cornersville. Shelbyville goes to Riverdale. Clarksville Northeast is at Rossview. Santa Fe hosting Culleoka. And big events happening there tonight. So you might want to get there a little early. I don't know. Stratford at STEM Academy. Spring Hill.
You might want to get there early anyway because the parking lot is a mess.
The parking lot is a mess. And if you don't want to walk a ways, yeah, getting there early is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Spring Hill is down at Summertown. I'll have coverage of that on MS_Sports Today's Twitter. You'll be at Santa Fe as well, so there's that. Greenbrier is at Sycamore. Grace Franklin is at University School of Nashville. White House hosting Lawson. Liberty Creek's at White House Heritage, and Watertown is at York Institute. On Saturday at 2 o'clock, Rossview is at Siegel. At 4 o'clock, Cannon County is at Murfreesboro Central Magnet. Again, these are double headers with the girls first, boys to follow. Clarksville Academy is at Davidson Academy at 6. Also at 6 is Donaldson Christian hosting Good Pasture. Friendship Christian is at Harding. Franklin Road Academy hosting the Tennessee Heat. Brentwood Academy is at Pope Prep, and Creekwood is at Upperman.
Girls basketball today, 5:30. Pope Prep is at Harpeth Hall. 6 o'clock, St. Cecilia Academy is at Christ Presbyterian Academy. Tomorrow at 1, girls only game between Father Ryan and Ensworth. At 2:30, University School of Nashville is at Valor Collegiate in a girls only game. At 6, Harpeth Hall is at Christ Presbyterian. Also at 6, Lipscomb Academy is at St. Cecilia, and Montgomery Central is at Cheatham County. Boys only game at 6 o'clock tonight. Battleground Academy travels to Bell Buckle, taking on the Webb Feet. And tomorrow night, boys only, 7:30, Montgomery Bell Academy is at Christ Presbyterian. College basketball doubleheader action on Saturday. Tennessee State is at Morehead State. That's a 12 noon tip-off for the women, followed by the men at 2:30 p.m. That one can be seen on ESPN+. Also on Saturday, Point is at UT Southern in a double dip, 12:30 for the women, 2:30 for the men. And Malone is at Tribeca, 1:30 and 3 o'clock. The latter game, or both games?
Both games will be on.
Both games are on Great Midwest Athletic Conference television.
Men's basketball today, Cumberland is at Central Baptist at 7:30. Tomorrow, Alabama will visit Nashville and Memorial Gymnasium. They take on Vanderbilt at 2:30 on the SEC Network. Lipscomb is at Bellarmine at 3. At 5 on the SEC Network is Ole Miss at Tennessee. Should be a really interesting ball game. Austin Peay's at Eastern Kentucky at 6. And on Sunday at the Curb, get there if you can. It's going to be live on ESPN2, though. Drake at Belmont.
Women's basketball tonight, 6 o'clock, Cumberland is at Samford. Tomorrow at 2, Eastern Kentucky is at Austin Peay. Also at 2, Bellarmine is at Lipscomb. On Sunday, Kentucky plays at Tennessee. That's an 11 o'clock start, and it can be seen on the SEC Network. At 1, Florida comes to Vanderbilt, and that's on ESPN+. NHL this weekend, the Preds travel to Dallas. That's a 7 o'clock puck drop on Saturday on Bally Sports South. The Grizzlies are on the road tonight at 9 against the Lakers. They can be seen on ESPN. And Sunday at 7 on Bally Sports Southeast, they are at the Suns. 12 noon on Sunday on CBS, the Titans season finale against visiting Jacksonville. And that is your rundown.
Top Stories brought to you by our friends, as always, at the Piggly Wiggly here. The Piggly Wiggly.
The Piggly Wiggly.
Here in Columbia, Neely's Most Shopping Center. Make sure to go by and get delicious lunch at the deli, or, of course, fresh hand-cut meats and more. All costs plus 10 at the register. That's Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Most Shopping Center in Columbia. Mo, today's top story comes from the Bay Area, the West Coast. Whatever else, the town. So whatever. The Oakland Athletics, who have been approved to move out of Oakland, don't want to be there.
Have no desire to be there.
No desire. Instead of leaving and
taking their ball and
going home, they are not allowing anyone else's ball to play in there.
Story on the Associated Press. The minor league Oakland Bees, short for Ballers, plan to take over the Oakland A's venue at the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum for a night of nostalgia in late June. until the big league club blocked their agreement as exclusive rights holder to the building for professional baseball. So the Ballers are going to be an independent league team and will begin play this coming season as part of the Independent Pioneer League. They had a game scheduled for June 29th while the A's are out of town against the Owls, OWLZ, Owls of Northern Colorado, in what they hoped would be, quote, a celebration of Oakland's baseball legacy in the Coliseum and a joyful farewell and celebration. Began negotiations in July to play at the Coliseum, had signed a lease and paid their deposit by December. A few days after Christmas, the Ballers were informed that the Athletics would be enforcing a clause in their contract with the stadium that prevents other professional baseball teams from playing at the Coliseum. We are disappointed in this development as we believe this would have been a great event for Oakland. Regardless of this setback, nothing will stop us from turning the page on a new chapter for baseball in the town. So here's the thing. The generally accepted thought behind this is the Oakland Athletics were afraid that they were going to get outdrawn by the Oakland Ballers.
I don't think they were afraid. I think they were
knew?
certain. they knew
They
exactly
weren't fearful. They were knowledgeable. Yeah.
Exactly. They knew exactly what was going to happen. Yeah. And that's a problem. And I understand that being a problem for them. I really do. Like, I get that. I'm not saying that they, don't have an argument here, because they do. And look, their contract does say no professional baseball teams. Now, what I don't know is, are the Oakland Ballers a professional baseball team?
I guess it depends on your definition of professional. I mean, they're playing independent ball.
Is the Pioneer League a professional baseball league? I assume it is. Otherwise, this would not matter.
You wouldn't think.
According to Wikipedia, it was affiliated, obviously, with minor league baseball, but it does not say whether or not they call themselves a professional baseball league, and neither does their website. So I think this could be an interesting situation.
It's certainly going to be interesting, and I don't think it's over.
I mean, if you pay your players, then
you're professional.
You're professional. It's intended to serve as a developmental league, but so is the USFL or UFL, whatever, right? No player on the active list having more than 3 years of prior professional baseball service. So you cannot have played in the minors for more than 3 years.
Right.
So if they are not a professional, or if they are a professional team, then you can't play on this team for more than 3 years. But if they are not, then guess what? This will be interesting. This will be worth watching and keeping an eye on. I have a feeling.
And I mean, if you are the Oakland Athletics, you know what good comes from this stance?
What does it?
I mean, clearly you're not concerned with the optics.
Yeah. Why does it matter to them? It doesn't.
You're leaving town. You've decided you're going to leave. You have secured another spot. I mean,
half secured. They have a city. They don't have a place.
They do have a city. They do not have a venue. Yeah, you're right. But I mean, what's your point?
Look, this is a petty move by the Oakland Athletics, being petty for petty's sake.
And, even as petty as we consider ourselves to be at times, this ain't it.
Well,
just go to Vegas, and you've ripped these folks' heart out already.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're just going to throw it down and stomp on it too? I mean, why? What are you accomplishing?
Absolutely nothing. You're accomplishing exactly what the Ballers probably want you to accomplish. You think they're going to get as much publicity out of this, or out of announcing their game versus announcing they're not allowed to play?
Because of the actions of the Athletics?
Yeah. This is free publicity. We're talking about this in Nashville, Tennessee. You don't think the Bay Area folks are talking? I bet Christopher Gabriel's talking about it.
No doubt.
And everybody else along the coastline, everybody else in San Francisco, Oakland,
everybody else
from San Diego to Seattle, they're talking about this.
Yeah.
It's a bad look.
It's an awful look. I mean, there's no good look for this for the A's.
It could have been. They could have welcomed them with open arms and said, "Hey,
take care of the stadium.
Take care of the legacy for us."
Mm-hmm. We've done what we need to do.
The legacy.
We wish the city of Oakland well. Why not do that?
That's that. Well, there was a part of a 2-hour and 46-minute interview that I watched in entirety.
So you have watched it all?
I've watched every second of it. And part of that interview was the subject was in an interview and in a separate interview, and was caught off guard by the line of questioning because that was not what was told to them ahead of time. He said, "Look, I was expecting this line of questioning and you're going to attack me over here. So now I have to pivot, right?" Well, why didn't you just say, "I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about this." And he said, "You misunderstand my job. My job is to me. My allegiance is to me, not to nothing else. So if you're going to attack me, then I'm going to attack back." And that may or may not be the right call. It may or may not be the right call. Public relations in an entity as big as Major League Baseball and a sub-entity as the Oakland Athletics or Las Vegas Athletics or whatever, taking the high road would be the better option. Instead, they have chosen animosity at every single step for the last 4 years.
Not just animosity, but antagonism.
Absolutely. They have antagonized every bit of it. It's absurd.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, David Ubben joins us, talk a little bit about college football and coaching and much more. So stick around. Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint, returns in a moment. Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint treats your orthopedic injuries and existing conditions. Our trained physicians will get you back in the game faster. Contact us at 931-381-2663 or www.mtbj.net. Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Tennessee. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the TSSAA. With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Murray County Schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic service, and our Ortho Quick Walk-In Clinic lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net.
Welcome back in Main Street Sports today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. Chris Yao, Maurice Patton. Mo, my New Year's resolution was not to argue on the internet.
You've broken it already.
I've not.
Oh, okay.
I've made it 5 days. Now, that don't mean I ain't typed it and deleted it. Because you got to get it out, right? So... But, man, college football conversations just get insanely ridiculous. They really do. Because fandom knows no bounds.
It's not all they know.
Exactly. They know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's just really interesting how college football really dominates a lot of what we do. And particularly the way that we try to incorporate the lower levels of college football from
I don't like to
FCS.
look at it as a lower level. I like to look at it as the underexposed.
Well, sure. The FCS to NAIA.
Underserved.
And, you know, so to us, there are some things that don't make a whole lot of sense. But maybe in another world, they do make sense. I don't know. Well, that's why we're going to talk to David Ubben.
That's absolutely why we're going to talk to David Ubben. David Ubben of The Athletic joins us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. And David, I know the Michigan-Washington National Championship game is on Monday night and dominates a lot of folks' attention, but I was really intrigued last week as it started to bubble up that Willie Simmons was going to leave Florida A&M as head coach to become running backs coach at Duke under Manny Diaz, who the two had coached together at, of all places, Middle Tennessee State. But I'm fascinated, David, that Willie Simmons clearly feels like the ascending hierarchy, if you want to be a Power 5 head football coach, is HBCU head coach, Power 5 position coach, and whatever comes after that. And that man knows better than anybody else what's best for his career. But it's an awfully disappointing thought to me that you can't get there from FAMU without being a position coach. I mean, not coordinator, position coach. So first, good afternoon. But second, wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been sort of a glass ceiling from HBCUs and moving up. I think some of it is sort of an accepted stigma of like, well, he's coaching at the HBCU, but if you want a big time FCS job or a G5 job, you don't see that move a lot. Obviously Dion is the exception, not the rule. And there's about a bajillion reasons we don't need to get into on this show for why he was able to make that leap. But it's sort of it's a troubling trend that's decades long. I mean, college football on its own has a long sort of history of underserving Black coaches, and there's not a ton of opportunities. I know a lot of these guys, talk to a lot of these guys, and everybody sort of knows the game. They know what's up, but you got to give yourself all the opportunities you can. And I think clearly in Willie Simmons' case, I think you're right, Mo, that the climb up is probably a little bit easier from being a Power 5 position coach, because then you get a coordinator job if you succeed there, and then you can get a head coaching job. And then once you do that, when you have that foundation of, well, he's already run his program, you sort of lessen a lot of people's concerns. But this is just where we are in the sport, and this is kind of what it is.
Yeah, I get that, and he gets that. And again, it's his career. Nobody's forcing him to make that move, but it's disappointing that having been head man at Florida A&M, having been the head coach at Prairie View prior to that, having had the success he had in both those positions, that he has to take a step back, a couple of steps back. Again, he's not going to Duke to be offensive coordinator. He's going to be a position coach. And, he pointed out, I guess, in an interview earlier this week that besides Dion, only 2 other sitting HBCU head coaches have moved to head coaching positions in non-HBCU positions. Willie Jeffries, when he left South Carolina State to go to Wichita State back in the early 80s, I guess, and which no longer plays football, by the way. I think he was the last head coach at Wichita State. And then Jay Hobson a few years ago when he went from Alcorn, which was his only HBCU coaching gig, to take over at Southern Miss. And Jay Hobson is not Black. So those are the only other 2 besides Dion to go from an HBCU head coaching position to a non-HBCU head coaching position. And it's, I guess, like you said, it's just where we're at, but it's got to be frustrating.
I mean, I know it is for a lot of the coaches, but I think in the same breath, nobody's surprised at a lot of this stuff. I think the Black coaches that I talk to and know, understand sort of what they're up against, because it's a tough spot, because that you can coach. And I think that this is one of the reasons why Dion had a lot of support for a long time, is that people have the idea of what a head coach looks like, or what a coordinator looks like or sounds like. And it doesn't always line up with what that guy is, despite the fact that he can be a good football coach, which is winning games. But perception is such a big part of it. And the AD's got to relate to you, and the boosters have to relate to you. And if there's a disconnect there, it can be tough for guys to get jobs. And especially if you don't have boosters pushing to hire you, that can be a problem as well. And, in the college football world, in the big time booster world, not a lot of people developing a ton of relationships at HBCUs saying, we got to get Willie Simmons in here. That's just not something that happens. So everybody knows what the deal is.
Yeah, it's kind of the elephant in the room that doesn't get discussed a whole lot. So I get it. But that was just something that had kind of been eating at me here this week. And so I
I think the
appreciate
thing
you
for
indulging
me,
me.
I think that the toughest thing for me is when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. like if you're trying to make a climb, it's like I get it. Yeah. Like I'm not even really surprised that he did it. You know, you just don't see that a ton. But from the HBCU level, if you want to move up, you do have to get a little creative sometime, no matter how much success you've had at that level.
I think what really hit me was when someone tweeted a few days ago, Kurt Weiler, who I think might be, he's an FSU writer.
Mm-hmm.
Heard some buzz about Willie Simmons potentially leaving. Now it would seem it's happening. He did some incredible things at FAM, and this is a logical, necessary step towards him landing an FBS head coaching job. And that kind of tore at me, because I don't know why that's a logical, necessary step. Clearly it is.
Yeah, I think the question is like, clearly it shouldn't be, but in the idealist's view, you would say it shouldn't be, but in the realist view, and looking at the landscape and looking how things are, it is.
Yeah.
It is, because of, like you said, people don't move up. Like you get that stigma on you of, oh well, he's a good coach, but he's an HBCU coach. It is what it is. Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is why?
Why?
Why? What I mean,
well,
what makes success at Florida A&M any less, important than success at any other, and obviously not to that level. I mean, you go 11-1 or 12-1 at Montana State, North Dakota State, whatever. Like, but if I took Sanford to 11-1, 12-1, my next position would not have to be a running backs coach at Duke.
Where did Kansas State's coach come from?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Where did Kansas's coach come from?
Well,
I think part of this is like when you get to the HBCU levels, the support is not what you'd like it to be. And so when you're at an HBCU and playing a lot of other HBCUs, it is sort of viewed as like the minor leagues of the FCS, because the financial support is not always there. And that makes it hard to do literally anything. It was a lot of the things that you heard Dion complain about, because I think he sort of knew what he was getting himself into at Jackson State, but not really. And so, when you don't have the financial support to run and play big time football, I don't have the budget numbers in front of me, but I feel fairly certain if you looked at what the budget was at a Jackson State, at an Alcorn State, at FAMU, and you compared it to Montana or North Dakota State, it would not reflect favorably on the administration. And in some ways,
okay, how does that not make it better? How does that not make what you did more impressive?
Because you're not playing a lot of teams. Like there's not a lot of crossover between, like the HBCUs will play bye games, but they're not playing up. Like a lot of HBCUs don't participate in the FCS playoffs. If you were at an HBCU and you made a playoff run in the FCS against those big teams, then I think you might be. I mean, a lot of this goes into the structure of like the Black National Championship and why it is that way and why it exists outside the FCS. Because I would have liked to have seen what last year's Jackson State team could have done if they'd gotten into the FCS playoffs, but they played in the HBCU National Championship rather, the SWAC MEAC, matchup. So, I think a lot of places, a lot of the HBCUs prefer it that way, but I think when you prefer it that way and you have the Black National Championship structure and all the tradition that goes into the Celebration Bowl, I think in some ways when you don't have those crossover games, it might work against the black coaches and your head coaches there, because there aren't a ton of crossover games, because you just don't see it a ton. You see them play bye games against big time teams, but you don't see them competing and beating a lot of the bigger FCS programs. And so, a lot of this points to just like the structure of lower level football, which is certainly debatable. I personally, I didn't grow up around HBCUs. I'm not as steeped in some of the tradition. As a college football fan, I would like to see more crossover. I'd like to see the SWAC and the MEAC participate more in the FCS playoffs when teams are eligible and would be in that field. But there's a lot of people who do not feel that way, that have a lot more tradition and a lot more invested in HBCU. So I kind of cede to them on that. But as a college football fan, I'd like to see more teams participate.
Well, that 14-point loss to USF looks a lot better now than it did in week 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were a touchdown out in the fourth quarter. It was 31-24 with 10 minutes to go in the game, and they lose by a couple touchdowns to a team that ended up being pretty darn good for South Florida standards anyway. So I don't know. I just feel like it's a little interesting that success, I guess sustained success perhaps could lead to something bigger, but it just doesn't make any sense to me how that's viewed differently than Wisconsin Whitewater.
Right.
Which is where Lance Leopold came from.
So there you go. David Ubben of The Athletic joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. And like I said, David, thanks for indulging me on that conversation, because
you can go into it for hours. There's a lot to it. I mean, I think some of it is about the structure of lower level college football. But and then it comes into the institutional support, but then why is the institutional support that way? Would it be different if they played? I mean, there's a lot of like existential questions, and a lot of tradition that means a lot to a lot of people, but some of it might be sort of self-inflicted, but
but not enough to reach into the pocketbook, apparently.
Well, yeah, institutional support is another major, it's, I don't have a lot of expertise about the, HBCU landscape in general. I just haven't grown up around it. Didn't spend a lot of time. I haven't covered it, but it is definitely frustrating for a lot of coaches that they don't have the support within the communities and within the university financially to do the things that they need to do. So I think again, this is like a 3-hour conversation you could have about the structure of HBCU football and the plight of coaches there. But Willie Simmons has certainly spawned some of it.
And credit to Willie Simmons for having the self-awareness to realize, if I want to be a Power 5 head coach, and I do, then this is what I have to do. And apparently he made that clear to the athletic administration at Florida A&M from day one. So he's been transparent about that all along, and his departure has been received nothing but positively at Florida A&M. So, congratulations to them as well. And I'll be interested to see where they go next. And I'll certainly be interested to see where Willie Simmons goes next. So, because, I mean, I don't know how many people bounce out of Duke other than Mike Elko, into Power 5 positions. So it'll bear watching. Shifting gears again, obviously, Michigan, Washington, Monday night. This has got to be a situation where Michigan wins it and then vacates it, right? Is that the way this goes?
We'll see. I can't say I'd be shocked if that was the outcome down the line. But that's a complicated. I mean, the thing that I always say when people talk about NCAA punishments is they don't act out of precedent a lot. And in this case, there's not a lot of precedent. But even when there is, it's still unpredictable. So, I think once once they go in the committee on infractions and put the bags on everybody's head and spin them around and throw the dart at the dartboard of punishments, it could be anything. So I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case, but I wouldn't be shocked if a very stern slap on the wrist happened too.
Look, I don't think in the college football playoff era we're going to be seeing many titles vacated.
Well, I guess first of all, the title is not
the
conducted by the
The
NCAA.
NCAA doesn't
So-
technically hand it out.
Well, the
So
issue
they
is that
can't
what
take
a
from
lot
you
of
what
these
they didn't
titles,
give you. Yeah.
what a lot of these titles were vacated for, is not to say it's legal now, but like getting guys paid is very easy to do legally, right? And so that's sort of been always what people have run afoul and have run into trouble for. The Michigan situation is so wholly different that it's just not something that we've seen before. So I generally agree, but not necessarily over a governance issue, but just the structure of the sport has changed. I mean, I think certainly the Jeremy Pruitt era in Tennessee were probably like the last people to really get hit for. I mean, you read the stuff in their allegations and you think about what's happening in the sport now. I mean, it's hilarious. Like, oh, they gave their mom like 10 car payments or like $3,000 to just take care of stuff, or they paid for their hotel on an unofficial visit. It's so, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, listen, I think that the one thing about the whole conversation on NIL and punishments and all of that stuff is that I think more and more people started to figure out. I think Miami was kind of the turning point, the Nevin Shapiro case. Like after that, I think more and more people started to realize, oh wait, the NCAA traffic cops are actually the bad people here. Like they're punishing kids and coaches for doing things that are objectively moral. Like, and you're trying to uphold an immoral, exploitive system. And so I think more and more people realize that. So, people complain about the transfer portal, and I'm not sure that the portal as it is now is good for the sport, but it's certainly a more equitable sport, and it's one that's easier to stomach in terms of how it's structured, and it's only going to become more so as we get something resembling revenue sharing with TV money, which is where the real money is, and something resembling employment status, whether that's official or unofficial or whatever. But I think the era of outsourcing payments to players for a third party I think it's those days are numbered in the sport.
And if Miami didn't make it clear, Oklahoma State did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you this though. Is that a slippery slope? Because right now, boosters can donate to collectives and that money is then divvied to players. If the boosters don't have to give to collectives to divvy the money to players in the future because they're getting employment status or whatever, I mean, what's to stop boosters from starting to hand out $100 hamburgers again?
Well, I mean, it's just it just wouldn't be necessary, right? Because you could just give it to the school and say, hey, this is what I want the school to do. You can have employment agreements. You can have different agreements with guys. I mean, it just wouldn't be worth it because your best players are going to be well paid. They're going to be well compensated. I mean, it's the same reason why it's not a problem at the NFL level or at the NBA level. The money won't be quite as big. Like the boosters are like talent acquisition is about to get even more expensive, more than likely. And so your boosters are already going to be stretched pretty thin. And so, they'll have to figure something out, but the upside and the cost, like, are you going to, when you're already making, if you're a star player and you're making $350,000, $400,000 a year, are you going to jeopardize that for like $100 handshake? Probably not.
Well,
but in the old days, you would have if you're not making anything. And hey, that means I can go take my girlfriend out for a steak dinner after the game that I couldn't afford otherwise. That's a pretty powerful motivator, and it's not when you're going to be making six digits, to risk all of that.
or 7.
Even if it is the favorite line of the guy from Moonshiners, tax free.
Yeah, there's an element of that, I think, but then you're talking about literal tax fraud. So I don't think anybody wants to mess with that.
No,
but I think it's. I think in general, like the amount of money that's floating around is a lot, but is also overestimated. Part of this with the employment status and the future of college athletes, and speaking about going down another rabbit hole that we could talk about for about 5 hours if we wanted to, is the play, like when you talk about Charlie Baker's plan or any sort of plan for the future, there has to be something resembling collective bargaining because the schools can agree to all this stuff, but nobody is like advocating on the part of the players. And so I talked to Jim Cavale a while ago, and he is putting together an athletes organization and trying to get guys organized so they can have something resembling collective bargaining, or at least players having some say. We talk about a Charlie Baker plan. It's difficult, but it's definitely possible. But you have to have that if you're going to have some plan where you're talking about, oh, we're going to have, a trust fund of $30,000 minimum for half of our athletes, or all of this stuff. Ultimately, the schools do not want, like I said, to have their player, compensation outsourced to a third party that they have some control over, but very loose control over, and they don't see their books. So that's another complicated thing. But, the sport it's going to some interesting places, but I think certainly in whatever the next step is, when you go into something resembling employment status, something resembling it, revenue sharing, even if it's not called that, there has to be something resembling collective bargaining where the players have some representation at the table and they say, we like this plan. We are okay with this plan. And right now, that is sorely missing. And every time you hear an administrator talk about it, it's like, well, the athletes don't want to be employees. Like, well, not all of them might be, but like the idea that they would rather have this sort of weird system than collect real money from the schools in a much more simple way where everything's out in the open and they understand what they can get or can't get. I think most people would prefer that system. But, you listen to enough administrators long enough, you hear some pretty impressive lies.
David Hogan of The Athletic joining us here. Do you have 3 or 4 more minutes? We weren't planning on taking you to the top of the hour, but if you've got it, we don't need to take a break because we were going to talk about the portal anyway.
Sure.
And Talia Tungavaloa has entered the transfer portal, but doesn't have any eligibility left.
Yeah, for now.
How does that work?
Well, so here's the
I'm
interesting
also
thing.
in the transfer portal. I would just like to announce.
So there's some interesting questions about what you can challenge in the courts and what you can't. And the eligibility restrictions are interesting because you're going to win everything if you go to the court, if you're limiting my NIL potential. And if you're Talia, who doesn't really have a huge NFL future, he played. So the case that they're trying to make is basically he played 5 games his freshman year at Alabama. That was not legal then, so he used up a year, but it's legal now. That's what they're going to press on. Well, you can press on that, but your real case when you go to the courts is you're limiting my NIL earning potential, and you are clearly in violation of the Supreme Court precedent in the Alston case. That's what they're going to press on. Now, some schools going to have to take that chance and probably help out with some lawyers and all that stuff. I would not bet against Talia winning this case, just because anytime the NCAA goes to a court and tries to explain its rules or defend itself, the courts look at them like, what? I joke about this all the time. Like joke about it because it's true. The college sports in a very divided political system is one of the few things that they can unite both sides of the aisle on is that the whole system is broken, because you have the left side of the aisle really angry about workers' rights and you're exploiting these people. They're not letting their earning potential. And then on the right side of the aisle, you're limiting a free market. There's no free market here. So you have united both sides against you. This is why you go to the Supreme Court with your case and you lose 9-0, because everyone sees it the same way of like, this doesn't make sense. It made some sense in the 80s. And then when you had the money exploding, it doesn't make sense anymore. So the Talia situation is very interesting. I would not bet against him winning another year of eligibility. And then the interesting question beyond that is, how far can you stretch that?
Yeah, because the NCAA is going to say, we gave it to him because he played 5 games and he, now it's okay to do it that way. And that's what the NCAA is going to say to save from somebody else saying, well, as long as I'm in school, I can play college football.
Exactly. That's sort of the question. I don't know that anybody's going to challenge that, but somebody might try. And it's like, if you're enrolled and you're actively pursuing a degree, and you're not in the NFL, you're not entering the draft, why should you be limited by the eligibility restraints the NCAA has? It's an interesting question. And this is why college sports, they've held on to the golden goose for so long with we're not going to share the TV money. We're not going to budge on NIL. We're not going to do all this. Well, now you've gone to courts and you've gotten your butt kicked in every single piece of litigation that's been out there. And now the courts are forcing you to do stuff that on its face is pretty stupid. Like, oh, multiple transfers in 1 year. That doesn't really make sense, but you can't do anything about it because you haven't gotten to a place where you have an equitable system where both sides can agree. So the whole thing is very broken, but it's because they didn't want to cede any ground for decades, and then the courts forced them to do it on the court's terms, which aren't necessarily great for anyone.
Two things. One, Talia has to be at a school to pursue this, right? I mean, he can't.
Presumably, yeah. Somebody's
Okay.
gonna have to take a chance and say, well, we were gonna take him in and use a scholarship, and I guess we have to use air quotes on that. Use a scholarship on him and figure out, well, we're gonna take a risk. But he's a really good college player. He's probably worth taking a risk on.
Okay. And two,
And it's going to be Miami.
this is
Right.
a situation. This is a situation, David, where again, if the NCAA had been a little bit more proactive at any point, we wouldn't be here, right?
Yes. I think eventually they would have gotten to maybe a different place, but it wouldn't have all been so fast and so forced by the courts. They
And
just
so
they
out of
never ceded
control.
anything. Yes, I agree with that. Like all the portal stuff and the roster stuff, I don't think it's good for the sport necessarily, but they did it to themselves. Like, and you can't say, well, these kids can't be doing this. No, the kids should be able to do this because if you're not going to pay them, you're not going to make them employees. You can't enforce all these non-compete clauses that you did for years. I mean, people forget we are not that long. This was like 6-7 years ago that when a player transferred, not only did he have to sit out a year, but the coach would give him a list of schools like conference opponents, division opponents, and players you played in the or teams you're playing in the future that you cannot go to. Based on what? Just that was how it was.
Their whim
And that is,
at that time. Yeah.
yes, exactly. It was just up to the coach's discretion. And like everybody knew at the time on the face, that doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem right. That's what it was. And now the courts have beaten you in mission and gotten you into a place that doesn't make a lot of sense.
It is absolutely insane, the world that we live in. And we could, you're right, we could talk for 5 hours, but we're going to let you go. And we appreciate your time that you did take with us, David, and look forward to talking with you again soon. And of course, looking forward to Monday night. It's going to be a really good football game.
For sure. Thanks, guys. I'm taking Washington, so enjoy that.
Oh, okay.
I think I am too at this point. I don't know. It's crazy.
All right. Thanks, David.
See y'all.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Terry McCormick, Titans update right after this. Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint treats your orthopedic injuries and existing conditions. Our trained physicians will get you back in the game faster. Contact us at 931-381-2663 or www.mtbj.net. Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Tennessee. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the TSSAA. With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Murray County Schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic service, and our Ortho Quick Walk-In Clinic lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net.
Well, we're back in Main Street Sports today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. Chris, I'm Mo Patton, and it's time now for your Daily Titans update from Terry McCormick. What's up, Terry?
How are you guys? It is your Daily Titans update, and it's powered, as always, by Zen Sports. Ryan Tannehill going to get one last ride on Sunday, and he's going to be your starting quarterback. So it's going to be one last ride of Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry in the Titans' backfield together. So I think that probably is a good idea on a couple of fronts. One, it gives them a chance to give Tannehill a thank you, the same way that the crowd is going to give Derrick Henry a big thank you on Sunday. And it keeps Will Levis out of harm's way from putting him in any further danger behind that terrible offensive line that's gotten him hurt twice.
Yeah, I'm sure Ryan Tannehill appreciates getting thrown behind. I mean, when you listen to that rationale, Ryan Tannehill sitting there going,
"But what about me?"
Yeah, damn. Oh, okay. You don't want to put him out there, but you don't mind putting me out there. Yeah. Okay.
His contract is up. He's been deemed expendable.
Exactly.
Here's a question, Terry. Do you feel like, because I've seen this kind of knocked around a little bit, and I don't know what the reality of it is, and it's probably not very realistic, but do you think there's a scenario where this isn't Ryan Tannehill's last ride?
That's a good question. I think, that's one that only Ryan himself could probably answer. But, I guess it would depend on how much he likes being here and how much he can accept the current situation that he would be in terms of being a number 2 quarterback. If he goes out into free agency, and granted he hasn't had a great year, hasn't been able to stay healthy for some of it.
Not his fault.
But there are some, there are a couple of teams where he could go and at least have a chance, if not to be the outright starter, to at least put himself back in a situation maybe like he was when he first came here, where he's the backup, but there's a chance to unseat the starter. Maybe like the Atlanta Falcons, somewhere like that, where they've, bounced back and forth between Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke with not a lot of success from either one. So if Arthur Smith survives, I could see him wanting to go there. The other thing with Ryan is, I don't know, given, what he said a couple of times, I don't know that he is the type of guy that wants to be like, some guys like an Andy Dalton and just collect checks to hold a clipboard and wear the headset. Dalton's kind of made a second career of that, same way Blaine Gabbert's done, the same way Tyrod Taylor has done, where you play when you're called upon, otherwise you're the mentor. I don't know if Ryan's interest lies in that area or not. I mean, you're talking about a guy who went out and got his pilot's license last summer, for crying out loud. He's got young kids. He's made plenty of money. It wouldn't shock me to see him just walk away altogether and say, I've had enough.
Look, that's certainly an option for him, and
it certainly makes sense.
Wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens, and certainly would not even blame him if that were the case. And so, but competitors are competitors. And that's why
and you don't get to the NFL and you don't last this long in the NFL not being one.
And that's why I don't think he's a Tennessee Titan next year for one. Because if he's going to be in the NFL, he wants to compete for the job.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I think go ahead.
Now, Terry, what are we hearing out of Jacksonville with regard to the quarterback situation there? Is CJ Beathard going to get a start at home Sunday?
Possible. It's possible. They've called Trevor Lawrence a game time decision, is what the people out of Jacksonville are saying. So that decision may run all the way up to an hour and a half before kickoff. Interesting, because, I mean, this game means everything to the Jaguars because, I mean, there's still a scenario where they could lose and still back into the playoffs, but all things considered, they would rather win, sew up the AFC South for a second straight year and have a home game down there. They don't want the Texans or the Colts sliding in and taking that division title away from them if they can help it.
Yeah, but boy, wouldn't that be some sweet revenge after last year?
Oh, absolutely. Among other things, after last year, after this year, yeah. I mean, if the Titans could somehow knock them off and upset their apple cart, that'd be so much the better. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, other than pride, about the only thing the Titans have left to play for on Sunday.
Well,
And so, you know, when you look at it from that perspective, you know, it doesn't atone for what happened last year, but it certainly would be a little bit of payback.
well, and that's why it's a win-win situation. If you win, you likely keep the Jags out of the playoffs. You certainly keep them from getting a home game. If you lose, you're at worst the 5th pick in the draft.
Worse.
And I believe it was said that the Titans can be no worse than number 8, even if they
No
do
matter
win.
what. Right.
So in that scenario, if you're going to be picking somewhere between 5 and 8, you're probably going to get the same type of quality player in there. So, you know, the only thing that I would be worried about is that both the left tackle prospects might be off the board if you're picking at 7 or 8. And one of them at least would probably be there at number 5.
Yeah, that's I think the big key. Neither Marvin Harrison Jr. nor Alt or Fashanu, I can't remember his name, is going to be
You'd
there.
like one of those 3 to be there, and if not, you know, I think you have to entertain Brock Bowers of the Georgia Bulldogs. You know, tight end is not necessarily a big need position, but if you could add a guy with that type of potential, I mean, think about if he becomes a George Kittle, Gronkowski, Laporta type of tight end that is all the rage, Travis Kelce, you know, all the rage around the NFL right now.
And in this offensive style, that could be huge. So, yeah, absolutely.
I saw somebody's mock that had the Titans taking receiver with their first 2 picks. And I'm like,
that ain't happening.
I don't know what you're smoking, but that ain't happening. So
I think they need to draft at least one receiver that can play right away. But it's a good free agent class of receivers: Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley. I'm missing one that I can't recall right now.
Restricted, but
you know, there are a lot of good free agent receivers out there that could really help this roster. Oh, it's T. Higgins, who is a Tennessee native.
He's restricted though.
No, T is unrestricted, I believe.
I don't know if. Oh, I'm sorry. He may be unrestricted. They can franchise him though.
Yeah,
they can.
That's
tag
possible.
Him. That's what it was. But here's the thing: do we want T. Higgins? He's out. By the way,
is he?
He's out this week in Week 18 when his team needs him the most for a playoff spot.
Well, the Bengals are eliminated though, so it doesn't really matter.
Are they?
Oh, okay. I thought they could win.
They've been eliminated. Well, they were eliminated with the loss last week.
Well, then of course he came up with a sore hamstring. He's protecting himself from free agency.
For free agency.
Look, the way I look at this receiving core right now, you got DeAndre Hopkins, and you need to go find 2 guys. I can't count on Traylon Burks, and I can't count on Kyle Phillips to help me because they can't stay healthy and they haven't produced enough when they've been on the field. Is that fair?
Still got NWI, baby.
He's a free agent.
Oh, okay. My bad.
So is Chris Moore. And then another guy that I would think about bringing back to Middle Tennessee. What about Juwan Jennings?
Yes, please.
Good luck getting him out of San Francisco, man. They love him.
They do, but he's also from Murfreesboro. And I think the Titans GM may have a little bit of ties to Mr. Jennings as well.
You don't have to tell me anything about Juwan Jennings. Thank you very much. His dad,
I know you know all about him.
Yeah. So, I mean, but yeah, let's go get him. I have no problem with it. So
Justin is saying in the chat that you need to go and recruit him.
Yes, he
So
is.
you need to send Juwan a text as soon as the 49ers season is over.
Well, hopefully his dad is watching the show. So we'll see how that goes. But Terry, tell us about Zen Sports.
Gladly.
The new sports betting app exclusively in Tennessee the last few months, and I'm excited to share with you some big news. Now, when you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to a $1,000 no danger first wager. That's right. When you place your first bet in Zen Sports with up to plus 500 odds, you can be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to a $1,000 maximum within 24 hours if the bet loses. And there's more good news. Zen Sports is rolling out its brand new VIP rewards program. This new VIP rewards program will allow top-tier customers to earn more bonuses, comps, and perks. The VIP program is by invite only, so if you feel your Zen Sports play qualifies for VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and faster withdrawals than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and older and in Tennessee to bet.
He shoots and he scores!
Since 1975, Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic has treated the orthopedic needs of Middle Tennessee residents. The trained physicians provide surgical options and minimally invasive options to treat all orthopedic needs. The walk-in clinic, OrthoQuick, helps you bypass the ER while treating sports injuries and acute needs Monday through Saturday. Visit MTBJ online at mtbj.net or on social media at Mid-Tennessee Bone Joint Clinic.
Smiles. These are the healthy smiles of real Delta Dental members. Folks with access to the nation's largest network of dentists and low-deductible plans with 100% preventive care coverage, all backed by over 65 years of expertise. Go online or give us a call to learn about affordable individual plans that meet your needs. 1-855-844-0445.
This holiday season, the largest lantern festival in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. Witness more than 1,000 handcrafted Chinese lanterns featuring brand new designs, including towering mythical beasts, a life-sized Santa's workshop, and a 100-foot-long dragon. Welcome back to Zoolumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
It's Friday. We got new music. That's funky. That's what we like. It's Main Street Sports Today. Maybe that's the new Friday. Maybe it's Funky Friday.
Play that funky music.
and
JK.
And look, hey, that may be the new Friday thing.
Funky Friday.
Play funky music and talk about funky topics and who knows. But this next topic is not funky. It's just getting ready to get started as the SEC basketball schedule commences this weekend.
I don't know, man. You mentioned that Ole Miss Tennessee game during the rundown. That's threatening to be pretty funky right there. Ole Miss coming in undefeated at 13-0, Tennessee at 10-3 at the basketball facility on campus at the University of Tennessee. And joining us to talk a little SEC basketball is Southeastern 14's Blake Lovell. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, guys. Yeah, it's SEC play is here. Now it's time to find out who's actually pretty good. So we'll find out, won't we? So
Well, I would think we will. And as you look at tomorrow's slate of conference openers, is there one that catches your eye more so than Ole Miss and fifth-ranked Tennessee?
I think the way this thing's set up was actually great to off of what we just said to try to really find out who's good. Because you've got a lot of scenarios here where you've got an Ole Miss heading to a Tennessee. Ole Miss has something to prove. People are still doubting them. They're undefeated. They're number 22 in the country now. But there's still a lot of people who think that it's okay, kind of based on maybe part of the schedule and all that. You've got South Carolina hosting Mississippi State. South Carolina's a team that a lot of people not sure. They're 12-1, haven't played the best schedule, but they host a Mississippi State team that's really, as always, like they're just hard to play against. So that's a tough first game for South Carolina. But if they win it, they play well, that proves something to you. Florida playing maybe as well as anybody in recent weeks. They're on kind of a hot streak here, and they host Kentucky with a chance to sort of prove themselves. Even Arkansas, right? Like Arkansas's got a lot to prove hosting Auburn. So, I mean, honestly, this is a much better opening day slate than I would have expected based on the matchups. And it's probably for different reasons because of how well Ole Miss has played, how well South Carolina's played. The trending upward of a Florida Auburn looks like the third best team in the league right now to me. So there's a lot of interesting games on the slate. But Tennessee, Ole Miss, Florida, Kentucky, probably the two that they get the most attention, but even Arkansas Auburn has a lot at stake. So
Ole Miss took some heat, obviously, when they hired Chris Beard. I think when Yao and I discussed it, I said, heck, somebody's going to hire him. Might as well be Ole Miss. I mean, and, you can't argue with the results to this point. I mean, for what they had on their roster coming into the season, what has Ole Miss done relative to your expectations to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I said this summer, and we were probably higher on Ole Miss than most people were. I said if they have their full roster, which included Musa Cisse and Brandon Murray, who were the two-time transfers, we didn't know if they were going to get eligible. Cisse got eligible before Murray did. Now with the whole two-time transfer business and all that, Murray's playing. I said if they had their full roster, I could see them as a top 5 team in the SEC. And my answer was very simple. It's Chris Beard because he's done it everywhere. He's won everywhere. And this is not, 20 years ago, right? Where you have to wait 3 years. Year 3 was always the thing. Let's see what happens in year 3. It doesn't work that way anymore. You can do it in one off season. And he's brought in, he brought in the size with Cisse and Jamarian Sharp. 7 foot, 7'5". He brought in a scorer in Brandon Murray. He brought in another scorer in Alan Flanagan, who's now fully healthy. But then you bring back 2 all SEC guys in Matthew Morrell, Jamin Brakefield. If you just start there, like that's a pretty good group that's going to be competitive in the SEC. But they've got other guys who are stepping up, whether it's Murray, Caldwell, all those guys. And so do I think they're going to wind up being a top 10 3-point shooting team in the country? Probably not, but they are right now. And that's been a big help because, again, I know in Kermit's era there, injuries played a big role. I think just, they always had bad luck with injuries. They couldn't seemingly ever get their full roster on, but offensively, it just felt like they were limited. Like they never kind of packed that extra punch. And, now they flipped that in one off season to where they're a pretty good offensive team. And I think that's been the difference.
Well, they are good offensively, particularly from behind the arc, 8th in the country in 3-point percentage, and that will certainly help you win some games, but it will also help you lose some games if you have a night where you're not very good at it.
By the three,
and you can die by it. But there are two things that they do really, really well. One is shoot the basketball from behind the arc. They're 8th in the country, yeah, I think, and then 4th nationally in blocking shots with 2 7-foot guys underneath. Those two things are interesting against Tennessee, particularly because Tennessee doesn't have a lot of size in the paint, and Tennessee really wants to put pressure on shooters and challenge shots. But as you saw at North Carolina, if you get hot from behind the arc and you move the ball well, you can blow this team out. So Tennessee is going to have to be on its P's and Q's come Saturday to take down Ole Miss. This is going to be a really good basketball game. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, when we previewed this game, there were people saying, hey, why is this spread maybe higher than you would think? And just outside the computers and all that. But my reason was exactly what you just said. If you look at Ole Miss, they're in the top 10 nationally in three-point shooting. But if you dive a little bit deeper and look at who they've made threes against, only one of those teams in Memphis, they've hit double-digit threes in, I think, 5 games this year. Memphis was one of those. They went 11-22. So a good shooting night against a Memphis team that's pretty good defensively on the perimeter. They're in the top 100. Everybody else is like outside the top 275 in terms of their three-point field goal defense. So they did it against teams that don't necessarily guard you great on the perimeter. What's Tennessee going to do?
And not much pressure,
right?
Particularly in an environment like TBA and FCC.
Well, Tennessee is going to make you start your offense like 1 foot past half court. They're going to be guarding you then, and you better try to figure out. And I don't know why this is the game I always come back to. I think about the Alabama game last year with Tennessee and Knoxville. And I felt like watching that game, Alabama started their offense 40 feet out every single time, and they were just all mixed up. They didn't know what to do. I think there are similar challenges for Ole Miss here in that they've not played a team like this in terms of like the pressure they're going to face defensively on the perimeter. And I think that's where Tennessee, if they take that away, I just don't know how well Ole Miss does offensively here.
And finally, Blake, I think 3-point shooting, of all the things that you ask to travel in basketball, I would think that is the least reliable.
Which is why I always come back to Tennessee, like because it's a team that, and this is a bigger part of the discussion, but it's like someone asked us yesterday, if you're betting the house on one team to win the SEC, my answer was very simple. How could it not be Tennessee? Because they do the one thing that's going to travel. Is Tennessee still, even as a team that has improved, I think, significantly on the offensive end, thanks to Dalton Connect, are they still going to have stretches in SEC play where they go 5 minutes without scoring? Probably. It's just, it just happens.
It's in their DNA. It happens.
But, right, the equalizer is they're also one of the very few teams, and really Mississippi State, maybe the other team, where they're going to hold their opponent probably at some point in that game to going 5 minutes without scoring 2. And so that kind of all equals out. And that's why I think that, yes, like the 3-point shooting, you worry about that traveling, being consistent. And that's where when you look at the teams that are going to rely on that, it's harder to trust them. And that's why, again, I go back to Tennessee, who is so much better offensively now. And they're one of the best defensive teams in the country, if not the best. I'll bank on that team in most games.
Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. You mentioned this Mississippi State, South Carolina game, and, South Carolina had their struggles last year under first-year coach and former Tennessee Chattanooga coach Lamont Paris. What have they done differently to get off to this 12-1 start?
Where I feel like this whole conversation relies around one common theme. That is the 3-point shot. Because South Carolina was just a horrible offensive team last year, as we know. They were just so up and down. They couldn't stop anybody either. But they went out, they got shooting, and they have, they're close to a top 100 in the country in three-point shooting about 35%, which is I always say, if you're shooting 35% in the SEC, most years, that is like shooting 45%, because this is just a league that traditionally is usually ranking in the bottom 5 nationally in three-point percentage as a conference, which I think defense plays a role in that too. But yeah, so they've made a lot more threes, and we talk about the dangers of that when you play against a Mississippi State team. It's kind of a similar setup to Ole Miss and Tennessee, except South Carolina's at home. Is South Carolina's getting 35% of their points from three. That is in the top 60 nationally. They don't get a lot of points from inside the arc. They don't get a lot of points at the free throw line. They're getting a big chunk from the three-point line. And so now you play a Mississippi State team, very similar to Tennessee. They're going to push you out. They're going to be physical. They're in the top 5 nationally in three-point defense. So this is a great test for South Carolina in game 1, because if they want to kind of, quiet the naysayers a little bit, matchup-wise, this would be a significant win for South Carolina, because I think Mississippi State is just a terrible matchup for them. And so their big 4, Miles Studi, Michi Johnson, BJ Mack, Talon Cooper, those guys have been gamers for them so far. The chemistry's been there. I think they're good enough to keep this thing going. But you want to talk about a contrast in the first 2 games of styles that they're going to play. Host Mississippi State at Alabama. If you're not on offensively, you're going to get beat in both those games, and it may not look pretty. So,
Blake, as an overall conference, only 4 teams ranked in the Associated Press poll. I've consistently lost respect for the Associated Press poll in both football and basketball pretty quickly over the last couple of years. But I don't necessarily want to fully rely on computers. That being said, the SEC has 5 teams in the top 25 net and 8 in the top 50, and both of those are tied for the most in the country for a conference. What is the level of conference play in the SEC, and is it enough to really push for 6-7 bids and come tournament time?
I think it is. Without trying to jinx it, I think that I would say this year more than any year that I can remember, whenever the SEC had set their own record for 8, that was several years ago. I think this is the year they have the best chance to break that and get to 9. I don't, and I think it's because of what you said though, and I'm with you. I don't rely on the AP poll in any way, shape, or form. I don't just rely on the computers. I hate the net rankings. But the computers love the SEC. And so, we know the committee factors all that stuff in. And yes, like by nature of teams playing each other, teams are going to lose games. But if you really think about it, like the computers have loved the SEC in recent years too. And we've seen 2 SEC teams, I think, break the record over the past 5 or 6 seasons for getting in with the most losses. And that's been Alabama and Vanderbilt. And I think just now, when you look at it this year, the league is stronger than it was probably those 2 years, because realistically, I don't remember the last time that you probably could have legitimately went into conference play and felt like, as of right now, Arkansas would be the team on the outside looking in, which is wild to think about, because South Carolina and Ole Miss would be in right now. Now, do they fall off? One of them is going to fall off, I think. And I think South Carolina is probably the better bet on that. But realistically, you could say that there are 10 teams that think they have a great shot to make the tournament right now. And I think they've proven that they have what it takes to get there. So I feel like, again, I don't love the computers either sometimes, but it's like there has been so much love for the SEC to this point. And outside of those first couple weeks, which we remember teams were dropping bad games left and right, it's gotten a lot better. And you've seen teams, even if they've lost to good competition, Alabama's lost 5 games. The computers still think Alabama's the top 5 team in the country. Like, I mean, and it's because they played such a tough schedule. They played a lot of close games. And so I think if you look at it that way, we're so far removed now from the era where it's like, if you lose a game, it's like, oh no, Kentucky lost to Wilmington. And I think the computers are knocking Kentucky because they lost to Wilmington without one of their best players. It's like, Kentucky, I think, has the 4th or 5th best odds to win the SEC right now. What are we doing here? If Kentucky has the 4th or 5th best odds to win the SEC, that tells me all I need to know. I'd go bet. I'm not a professional bettor. I'd go bet Kentucky every single day as long as they stay as the number 4 or number 5 team in those odds. So I think this is the strongest the league has been probably since 2019, which was the year you had, I want to say it was either 5 or 6 teams were, top 5 seeds that year. Plus you had a couple teams that were 8, 9, 10. So I think it's a really strong league thanks to the ascent of a South Carolina, Ole Miss, teams like that.
Chris, you ask how many they can get in. Your favorite bracketologist, Joe Lenardi, earlier this week had 9 SEC teams in.
Well, but again, he's got Ole Miss and South Carolina in, I'm sure. And again, that's not necessarily, we don't think that's going to play out the whole season. That being said, there's always a team that comes from out of the bracket into the bracket.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that could.
Look, I think Arkansas makes it. I mean, that's the thing, right?
And he doesn't have Arkansas in.
Exactly. So it's like, I mean, I find it hard to believe Arkansas won't turn this thing around because they do it every single year. And so they're going to replace somebody. Like the SEC is not going to get 10 in, but they're going to replace one of these teams. And again, the best bet I think will be South Carolina.
And Duke is going to factor in at some point in that discussion.
Yeah.
So here you go, man. It's going to be a really intriguing SEC basketball season. I skim through the update we get from Craig every week, and a lot of it's the same stuff. But there are some really intriguing points in this that it really goes to show the strength of the SEC in the country. Because we talked about football being, it felt like everybody was just mid all year long. And so, but basketball kind of lends itself to that. But it really does feel like there are 15 or 20 teams that are just really, really good this year. And when you see them play one another, it's always a lot of fun to watch at that top level. SEC probably has 3 of those, and Kentucky's one of them. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah. That's the thing is I think legitimately right now, again, I wish I was a little more bold on Arkansas, but they have done their laps a little bit earlier this year. And so I'm not as willing to think they're going to turn it around completely, but I think you can make the case that there are at least 5 teams that can win the conference. And I don't think we've been able to say that since probably 2019. Like legitimately, we can say, okay, maybe this team can do it, maybe this team, but I think from a legitimate standpoint, and maybe 2022, I guess, was the other one. You had like 4 teams, I think, that won 26 or more games that year. I want to say that was Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky, Arkansas. But I think you've got 5 teams, probably at least, that could win this thing this year. So,
and that's A&M, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama.
I would still put Alabama in there because
I would too. That's why I just wanted to make sure you had Alabama in there. I had them in. I didn't know if you did. And
I don't know that I do, but
they shoot the ball so well, though.
That's the thing.
You never know what you're going to get, but if they're on,
you didn't mention Auburn.
That was the last team I said.
Okay, my fault.
I assume Auburn is the 5th team.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing, and I know like Alabama, we could talk about for an hour, but it's like, I look at a team like that and I am just thinking, because I feel like there are quite a few SEC teams that their offensive numbers look great right now, but we see this every year. They look great now, but they start to backtrack a little bit when you're not playing the 300th ranked team in the country. Alabama, I don't think it's going backwards offensively. I mean, they've done it against one of the toughest schedules in the country. They've been putting up 80+ points consistently. I think they're outscoring the 2nd best team in the country by a full 2 points or something. And I just think they're going to go outscore teams. Their defense is not good, but don't matter if you're winning 95-93, you're still winning. And so I think they're going to do that to a lot of teams in the SEC this year. So,
man, this is going to be one of the more fun SEC basketball schedules that we see throughout the year. Looking forward to it. Of course, Saturday again, CBS at noon, Mississippi State, South Carolina, followed up on ESPN 12:30 with Kentucky at Florida, which will be a very good basketball game. It's going to be fun to watch. Auburn, Arkansas on ESPN2. Ole Miss, Tennessee again at 6 o'clock on the SEC Network right after Alabama, Vanderbilt at 3:30. So, and then the nightcap, LSU, Texas A&M. That has sneaky good potential too.
Yeah, LSU is better now that they have what I think is their best player in Jalen Cook, who was out again waiting for the waiver, and now that he's played the last 3 games. Like he's played, I think 28 or more minutes in every game. They're much better offensively. So that's the thing. Is like, I hate to say this, but I think there's only one team in the SEC right now that feels like it is just way behind the pack, and without even saying it, I think we know who that is. I even think an LSU is not a bad team and could find their way maybe into that top 10 somewhere potentially.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Blake, as always, we appreciate it. Make sure to follow Blake at @TheBlakeGlobal on X, Twitter, and of course, all of his work with SouthEastern14.com. Blake, as always, we appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Blake.
Take a break. When we come back, we've got some money to talk about at the NCAA and college football playoff level. We'll get back to it right after this. Stick around.
Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint treats your orthopedic injuries and existing conditions. Our trained physicians will get you back in the game faster. Contact us at 931-381-2663 or www.mtbj.net.
With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today. Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Tennessee. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the TSSAA.
Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Murray County Schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic service, and our Ortho Quick Walk-In Clinic lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net.
Welcome back into Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. Chris Yao, Mo Patton here on this funky Friday.
Sure.
As we're getting ready for the weekend. And Mo, this came out yesterday while we were in the middle of tours and whatnot, and getting ready for a remote. So we didn't get a chance to look into it much. But the NCAA and ESPN inked an 8-year deal worth $920 million for 40 of their championships, including women's basketball, that, according to Front Office Sports, is valued at $65 million annually. There are some folks who will tell you that if that's the case, then tournament units need to start making their way back to schools. And I don't disagree.
Well, I mean, otherwise, where's the money going?
Where do you think? In Baker's pocket, right? That's what everybody will tell you. It's not right, but that's what everybody will tell you. I mean, oh, they're lining their pockets over there at the NCAA. That's not true. I don't know where it's going, but on September 1st, it will pay out an average of $115 million per year, with women's basketball making up 65% of that number, or 65 million of that number. And I mean, obviously the NCAA has to pay certain things out of it. They have to pay for travel. They have to pay for, all the things that go along with that. But not as much as the men's tournament, because schools host the first two rounds, and and then there's a lot of things that they do to.
So there's fewer teams traveling, and there's less travel because of the way they typically try to regionalize.
Yep.
To some degree, the tournament. So
I think it's interesting. This would be a situation where it's triple the price of the current package, according to Front Office Sports, which averages $34 million a year for 29 championships. And hopefully, according to EVP and head of Americas for media at IMG, Hillary Mandel, says the reason it wasn't a renewal, it's a reset, she called it, is because it will help rectify many of the NCAA's longstanding gender inequities.
It's interesting that that is being said, because I think that's the issue that a lot of women's basketball folks in particular have with this new agreement. Because I'm looking at an AP story from yesterday that says, after being criticized for inequitable resources and facilities at the 2021 men's and women's basketball tournaments, the NCAA commissioned a law firm to do an outside review of gender equity. Among the numerous recommendations in the resultant report was to consider unbundling the women's basketball tournament from the rest of the championships. That report included an estimate that the women's tournament could be worth between 81 and 112 million annually. So when this package comes back with the women's tournament drawing 65 million annually, I guess that's where some of the questioning comes from. But
and that is because the report stated that if pulled out, it could get anywhere from 81 to 112 million a year by itself. Maybe. I mean, depending on if there was any competition. Does Fox want to deal with that? And it be the only thing they do? Does Turner? Because Turner's kind of full. They got the men's tournament. They're a little busy. And I mean, ESPN is kind of the only real option here.
it's interesting. Somebody says, we thought there were a lot of flaws in that report. We think that every media partner we've ever spoken to thought that when it came out.
Well, yeah, they did because it cost the media partners more money. Of course, they thought it was wrong.
Some of these numbers people were talking about were not realistic. They just weren't.
And that may be true because there was no competition. There would be no competition.
I get though where people might be a little bothered by, the fact that the NCAA is just so willing to accept that. Okay, so those numbers were wrong. I mean, then why did we commission the report? If we're not gonna, trust the report and we're willing to devalue women's basketball by at least $16 million a year.
Or women's basketball is now getting nearly double what the entire championship portfolio was paying out last year. The whole 29 championships was 34 million. Women's basketball is now getting 65 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
well, this is more, as you would say. But
this is what we call a negotiation that ends in a compromise.
But I mean, if I tell you, okay, you were getting 34 million last year, you're going to get 65 million this year, but you're leaving 20% of what you could be getting on the table. You're cool with that?
Based on what? The study?
Yeah.
But not based on conversations with the media partners, which is what the NCAA is telling you.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because in case you guys don't know, media partners are the ones paying it. If ESPN said no to 81, and then you end up like the Pac-12, who can't get a partner other than Apple TV, and it's based on how many people subscribe, and it ends up being 12 million, well, you've left 42 million on the table.
Mm.
Compromise is where everybody gets hurt a little bit. Everybody's got to take a little bit. And if it's increasing everybody, including women's softball, gymnastics, I don't remember everybody else in here, but
all of those.
Volleyball. If it includes getting their numbers up substantially as well, then I think you got to take the $40 million raise.
You got to take.
Whether or not there's 16 million left out there, you got to take the $40 million raise.
Yeah, man, that's tough.
It's really hard to say no to $40 million. Is 16 left or not?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And it's not. And again, you have to remember that it's not just because how much is volleyball, gymnastics, and FCS football worth by themselves or collectively, even without women's basketball? Because the only other thing that is real in this money is softball.
Mm-hmm.
Women's basketball and softball in these 40 championships, you can name all 40 of them, and there's water polo, equestrian, whatever. None of them are coming close to women's basketball and softball.
No. Tennis, track and field, men's gymnastics, women's Division 2 and 3 volleyball and basketball championships, men's Division 2 and 3 basketball championships.
Wait, so you're telling me that volleyball has its own media package?
This just includes, I guess
is
volleyball is already in there.
Okay, so these are the added 11.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
All right. I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me it's the Division 1 basketball or volleyball was not a part of it?
No.
It was.
So
those were the added 11. Okay, because there were 29. Now there are 40, and the deal's triple. So you only added about a third sports, and you got triple the money.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good deal no matter how you slice it.
The deal guarantees national championship events in the E1, women's basketball, women's volleyball, women's gymnastics, and FCS will be aired on ABC, though it does not guarantee any start times. That's interesting.
No. Well, I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to be sitting there at the house like they are watching 4 men's games at 10 o'clock every day.
Yeah.
Maybe they are. There are some people who will.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely some people who will.
ESPN will also air selection shows for at least 10 championships on its linear networks. We had lots of conversations with lots of third parties and lots of interested parties, but we stay with ESPN as long as they continue to make progress on the deal. I do believe this was the best deal that was available, said Charlie Baker.
Well, if it's not the best deal available, then you're an idiot.
Well,
you can't be, listen.
I mean, what else are you going to say?
Loyalty is it's useless in this day and age in college athletics. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because loyalty from either side is rarely celebrated or valued at any point. So you got to do what's best for your entity. And if he did that, and that's where we're at, then great.
Yeah.
But if Fox was willing to pay $81 million for women's basketball and you said no, because now you've got 28 championships or 39, either one, and you're only going to get $34 million for those, well, then you did a disservice to the women's basketball, but you also probably did a disservice to 39 other sports. And so the NCAA, again, is a collective. They are not there for women's basketball or men's basketball or FCS football. They're there for, they have to be there for everybody. And that's why it kind of is what it is in this deal. Triple the money, take it every time. Yeah. All right. As we look ahead to college football playoff championship, Mo, SMU, losers of the Fenway Bowl to Boston College, 6-6 Boston College, moving to the ACC. No, I'm not throwing shade at the AAC champion. Not at all. That's not me. I would never.
You would never.
I would never point out that the AAC champion lost to a 6-6 team from the ACC while they're trying to make it a big deal that Liberty lost to Oregon, one of the top 4 teams in the country. But hey, whatever. Anyway, inside, this is from Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports. Inside a hotel boardroom Monday, before the championship game, the college football playoff is expected to meet and approve format changes, which will go from the 6-6 to 5-7 model, the Power 4 conferences, plus the G5 rep and 7 at-large members. But they're also potentially talking about the money that will be paid to former Group of 5 schools who moved to power conferences, such as Southern Methodist University, the latest, and basically said you have to have a unanimous vote to alter revenue distribution and diminish somebody else's revenue. That's it, said Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner. So you're going to need 11 members of the College Football Playoff Board to make changes to the revenue distribution. What's on the table is not paying for a certain amount of time, whatever, I don't know what that time is, the G5 schools that move to power conferences. For the next 2 years, the school could be out $6 million SMU. That officials expected to receive includes $1 million in CFP share from the Group of 5, as that too is at stake. Currently, the college football playoff distributes $460 million, but then $6 million to SMU is going to be a problem.
Well,
now, if there's a school who can accept not getting $6 million,
probably SMU.
It's SMU. That being said, that's not a good reason not to give them their money. I mean, what did the man say? I won. Give me my money.
Mm-hmm.
And college football playoff is all Debo. You what? Man, I lost. I mean, like this is absurd because you're asking these teams to basically what the college football playoff is doing is saying no more realignment. We're done.
Yeah,
you're done.
Where you are is where you are, and if you move, it's going to cost you.
Because here's and what does this do for Oregon State and Washington State? That's the real question. Because how do they rebuild the Pac-2 into a 8, 10, or 12 team conference without
realignment,
without some sort of realignment?
Yeah.
But does the college football playoff accept the new Pac conference as a power conference? Probably not. So therefore, it wouldn't change. But is the Pac-2 getting the full college football playoff payout? I don't think so.
Likely not.
That 11-member board is probably going to say no on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
But they got to get something because they are technically an NCAA conference for 2 more years.
A 2-team conference, but a conference nonetheless.
They don't get any bids automatically to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. But they have to get some money. And I don't know how much that is. It's going to be really interesting. So, Ross Dellinger says it's a goodness, I cannot get that out of my throat. Says if the college football playoff does deny SMU's Power 5 funding, the association sets a moratorium on additional revenue for those schools, elevating from Group of 5 to Power 5, which Power 4, of course, a policy likely to even span into the new CFP contract starting in 2026. It's another sign college leaders are attempting to redistrict Division I's highest body from further expansion. Sorry, Delaware. You're the last one. Well, congratulations, Delaware.
Yeah, they're the last ones at 5 mil.
Make sure to turn out the lights.
Yeah, everybody else is kind of locked in.
I don't know how much I like this.
I don't. I mean, it just seems overly restrictive. It's like we don't want to play with you guys, which it's basically it. We don't want to play with you guys. Y'all go over there to the kiddie table.
And I'm not okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we'll continue this discussion probably on Monday. We'll also give our picks for the college football championship. So,
yeah, David, I've been going with the Huskies, by the way.
I can see it. I understand why you would say that. It's been weighing on my mind pretty heavily. So, anyway, hope you guys had a great week with us. We'll be back Monday for the first time in a while at 2:00.
Yeah, you sure about that?
Exactly. So come back with us at 2:00. Mo?
Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend